It's Tuesday, the 2nd of November 2021. Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Headlines, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Morning, Michael.
5 stories in 5 minutes. Here we go. Westpac's share price fell by more than 7% yesterday after the bank unveiled a disappointing full-year result. Not a good day.
No, it wasn't at all. Westpac is now the third largest bank in the country behind Commonwealth Bank and National Australia Bank. Until yesterday's announcement, it was actually number 2. The full-year result to the end of September was hit by costs and a poor performance from its institutional bank. Now, the bank's net interest margin, that's the difference between what it pays on deposits and receives on loans, was squeezed. A big part of the cost problem, though, Michael, was that the bank had to employ more than 3,000 new staff during the year to help improve its compliance and risk management practices. Remember, back in 2019, the then CEO Brian Hartzer resigned after money laundering was uncovered at the bank. Westpac now has more than 40,000 employees. The bank overall reported cash earnings of $5.35 billion, which was more than double the previous year, but that was a COVID-affected year. It did announce a higher-than-expected dividend. It also said that it would buy back $3.5 billion worth of its shares. But really, Westpac's been the underperformer of the 4 major banks. While Commonwealth Bank, National Australia Bank and ANZ are all up around 50% over the past year, Westpac has risen by less than 40%. Not bad, but not as good as the others.
Okay, on to story number 2 now, and one of my favourite topics, real estate. We got the CoreLogic house price figures yesterday. Is the market still booming, Sean?
Sort of. Maybe not at your place, but sort of. Across the capital cities, prices rose another 1.4% last month. If you include regional Australia, it was up 1.5% and 22% over the past year. Now, that's the fastest pace in about 32 years. Among the capital cities, Hobart was a runaway winner, up 28%. Next was Sydney and Canberra, around 25%. Then Brisbane, Adelaide, Darwin and Melbourne. Perth, the city least affected by COVID, was a laggard, with prices rising just 13%. What's it all mean? Well, I think the peak in growth is certainly over. The 2 exceptions are Brisbane and Adelaide, which are still performing well. When interest rates start rising and new rules around lending kick in, it's probable that growth in prices will take a breather for a couple of quarters, possibly even a couple of years. When will that happen? Not sure, but probably we'll start to see it in the second half of next year.
All right, on to story number 3 this morning. And Sean, all eyes are on Europe at the moment and the COP26 climate summit, but there's a bit of a sideshow happening. And I suppose the question is, are Australian-French relations at an all-time low?
Probably, though I must admit I don't know my French-Australia history very well. It's all over French President Emmanuel Macron's comments to Australian media yesterday morning that he didn't think he knew that Prime Minister Scott Morrison lied to him. Mr Macron also indicated he was unsure whether he could trust Mr Morrison. You can imagine back home the Labor opposition piled in, while Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce, in typical style, said Australia didn't deface the Eiffel Tower. Everyone should calm down. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg said Mr Macron had made an incredible choice of language. That's a fair call. And yesterday afternoon, the Foreign Minister Maurice Payne held talks with the French ambassador about the incident. Overnight, Mr Morrison hit back, saying he'd personally told the French leader about the possibility of the subs deal being dumped. The Prime Minister conceded he didn't mention the US and UK alliance to Mr Macron, saying it was too confidential. Now, Emmanuel Macron has been in politics for a long time. He knows exactly what he's done, and clearly the relationship between Paris and Canberra is not very good.
Yeah, I think that's right. On to story number 4, and after stockpiling points during lockdowns, Qantas frequent flyers have gone on quite a splurge.
Sure have. They've spent 4 billion points on more than 175,000 airline seats in under 2 weeks. Incredible. The big international destinations are Los Angeles, London, Fiji and Honolulu, and there are plenty of points used in flights up and down the East Coast, Brisbane, Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, Melbourne.
Yeah, makes sense. And finally, Sean, story number 5, and it's the logical choice for our final story this morning. Have you backed anything for the Melbourne Cup this afternoon?
Well, I have, but before we get there, I want to tell you a few facts. From last Friday until the end of next weekend is the biggest 10 days in thoroughbred racing for the year, with major meetings across the country. Obviously, the highlight is today's Melbourne Cup. Thoroughbred racing is actually one sector that's done pretty well during COVID, and Australia is a major global player. Now, prize money in Australia is up 82% in the past decade, We have 72 races a year worth $1 million or more, and that's twice as many as 6 years ago. Across all of Europe, they have just 18. In the USA, it's just 49. And finally, according to the Thoroughbred Breeders Association, international buyers spent almost $79 million in yearlings and breeding stock last financial year. That was up from the year before, and that's despite not being able to come. But your question, do I have a tip? Well, there's a hot favourite called Incentivize, and the best of the overseas horses seems to be Spanish Mission. I've studied the form hard. I'm going for Tralee Rose because that's my daughter's name.
That's as good a reason as any. That's the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thanks, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 2nd of November, 2021. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't enough, then you can find our longer podcast called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform. You can always find more information as well at fearandgreed.com.au, where you can also sign up for our free daily newsletter. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fear and Greed Business Headlines. Have a great day.